Comrades, I'm sure over today, many of us will mention the whole number of anniversaries that have been celebrated and will be celebrated by the workers' movement this year. Not least, of course, the centenary of the 1926 general strike, where for 9 days and more, workers in Britain contended for power, and in some parts of the country actually were, for a little while, the power. But we, the NSSN, celebrate our 20th birthday this year. In 2006, the RMT, under the leadership of the late, great Bob Crow, initiated the NSSN to build a rank-and-file network across the unions as part of the ambition to rebuild the shop stewards movement. We stand in the tradition of others who have come before, the minority movement of 26, the liaison committee of the late 60s and early 1970s, and the broad left organising committee bloc of the 1980s, and to build support for the miners' strike. 20 years, no mean feat to build and maintain and sustain a union organisation of this character, and we are very proud of that. And we are very much a lot to be proud of. In 2009, we had the heroic struggles of Lindsay, Vistian, Linamar and Vestas. Between 2010 and 2012, the battle against Cameron's austerity and the fight for coordinated strike action, even the idea of generalised strike action. Don't forget a Tory and Liberal coalition government. The fight against more Tory anti-union legislation, Cameron's Trade Union Act of 2016 and Sunak's 2024 minimum service level legislation, which we shouldn't forget the MSL was defeated. And where there has been strike action, where there have been workers victimised, where unions have been under attack by Tory, Labour governments and councils of all party colours, the NSSN has always been there and we always will be there. Now, 20 years is a lot of conferences, it's a lot of lobbies of the TUC, and it's a lot of prime ministers. And when we get to Brighton in September to lobby the TUC Congress, we'll be on our 9th prime minister, at least, and the 7th in a decade. Now, some of us here of a more advanced age can remember when there were 3 prime ministers in nearly 30 years, Thatcher, Major and Blair. And I think it's safe to say that that represents a crisis in political representation and one of the capitalist class. Because every one of those prime ministers, every one of those 9 prime ministers have proudly represented the interests of big business and the capitalist establishment, both at home and abroad. But the lesson of the last 2 years, let alone of the last week, is that whatever party rosette you wear, if you stand for this system, if you put profit before workers, our families and our communities, and if you carry out their austerity, you will be in a political crisis. Starmer hasn't left number 10 because he wants to retire. He's been booted out of office because his Labour government, his new Labour Mark II, in the minds of working class people and working class communities, with the cost of living bearing down on us, despite a massive 170-plus seat majority, the perception is they have barely changed a thing. And worse, they tried to cut pensioners' winter fuel payment. They targeted disability benefits, while at the same time, we're still waiting for the POA to get their right to strike back. Still waiting for the 50% strike ballot threshold to be scrapped. And a Labour council, yes, a Labour council in Birmingham, backed by a Labour government in Westminster, attacked the bin workers and injuncted their union Unite to the tune of over £250,000. We demand that the new council in Birmingham, propped up by the Greens, stop prevaricating and not just honour the deal that was finally agreed by Labour before the May election. We go further. The Greens must demand that the fire and RIA is withdrawn and any victimised workers are reinstated. You talk radical, you act radical. Stop the talking, start acting. And we are still waiting for the inflation-proof pay rises we need to keep our heads above water. Yet prices rise, bills rise, rents rise, mortgages rise. Far too much of the month left when the pay runs out. This is the new situation, or this is the situation that the new Labour Prime Minister will walk into, and as we know, likely to be Andy Burnham. You see, I think the union movement has a decision to make. Some want to wait for Andy to be crowned and then to decide what he wants to stand for. But in this period, in this crisis, we can't wait for anyone, because waiting creates a vacuum which Farage and the far right are trying to fill with their divisive poison. The NSSN calls on the unions to act now, because the way to defeat the right is by uniting workers through action and by fighting and standing for an alternative, and in our feeling, a socialist programme. To put a shopping list of demands on to Burnham. See, Burnham is standing to become Prime Minister because he says the Labour government needs a change of direction. Although I must say, it's not a good sign when there's talk of Blairites and Starmerites being in his cabinet. Show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. The worst mistake we can make, especially in this period, is to be guilty of wishful thinking. So, okay, let's find out where you stand, Andy, and let's start with pay, perhaps. And the unions must put a choice to him. It's us, the working class, or the capitalists. It's us, or the profits of big business. And that's why we have drawn up our action programme of demands. It's not exhaustive, but it would be a programme of intent. Although I have to say, if you want a sign of intent, Andy, go up to Birmingham, pull the commissioners out to Birmingham, reinstate the terms and conditions of pay of the Birmingham bin workers, give them back the £8,000 a year that's being robbed off them. And this programme, to be taken into the unions, must be backed up by action. Already a number of national public sector unions have signalled their intention to ballot for strike action against Starmer's totally inadequate pay offers and pay remits. And there are debates going on in other unions about moving towards action. Some union leaders may argue, let's give him a little bit of time. But how can you face up to the massive pressure coming from the bosses who want us to pay for their crisis unless we mobilise the mass force of the trade union movement in what we believe should be united, coordinated strike action? This is the industrial and political programme that we put forward here today because it's what workers need. That if agreed today, we'll take into every workplace, every union branch, every trades council and on to every picket line. Comrades, I'll finish with this. This is the year of anniversaries. The general strike, Cable Street and many others. We mark and we celebrate them. We honour our past, working class history. But we do that to learn from history, to prepare for the future. Actually, is to make us ready for the present, for here and now. This is the role of the NSSN. This is the role of the National Shop Stewards Network. This is the role for every fighting union and every fighting trade unionist. The NSSN, 20 years in the making, still here. Join us in our fight.